I went outside earlier today and was talking to one of my neighbors, and we were just bullshitting about stuff. And then another one of my neighbors came out, and he was there, and then we just were talking for 10 minutes or something. And it was just random conversation about life, Like, we talked about the weather, and we talked about different stuff that had happened, and one guy was talking about how he'd been struggling with addiction in years past and how he'd worked through that, and we talked about hiking and bear spray and, nothing particularly consequential, just random talk. But the truth of the matter is, all three of us are single guys just kind of doing our thing. And, there's a pretty big difference between us probably in terms of, what sort of people we are and life stories and age and all of the above. But I was just thinking, because, usually you spend so much time kind of avoiding people. Like, I just don't really try to talk to people very much. So it's probably a little bit rare when I wind up actually going and talking to somebody, because I don't seek them out. But then once in a while, maybe you do wind up talking to somebody because you ran into them. And then you realize we all kind of, as guys, just have a certain something that we have in common. And it's just this journey of what is it that makes a man a man. And maybe that's one reason why all of the woke stuff that's going on these days is sort of offensive, because in a way it feels like it's an insult to the silent identity of what it means to be a man. Like, we've always had this sense of, what is it to be a man? And I'm not saying it's a macho thing. Like, I really don't even think it is at all. Like, I think there's a bastardization of what it means to be a man that is the result of people trying to chase exterior things. Like, are you driving a big truck, and do you have a big house, and all of that kind of stuff. Because the truth of the matter is, I've seen these pictures of a guy's pad, right? Like, I'm sure you've all seen it. And he's just got his sleeping mat there, and his computer there, and a lamp, and that's it. Nothing really much to speak of. And I think that's really kind of the heart of it. Guys are pretty simple creatures at their core. Like, we don't really need a lot of stuff. We don't need much really to feel like we've got enough. Like, to me, I really think the truth of the matter is, I don't need a lot. I need clothes to wear. I need the food that I eat. I need, a few basic things that I enjoy. And I don't really need a lot of stuff. I think that's kind of the trademark of maybe what it means to be a man, to kind of have simple tastes. There's that appeal of being like, I guess maybe a little bit Spartan. Like, you just, you have your sleeping mat, you have your, you have your working tools, you have a couple friends. If you're lucky, you have a woman, and that's about it. Like, you don't need a lot to be satisfied. And the world has gotten so busy and complicated with a lot of stuff that's supposed to be gathering our attention and making us feel like we need to chase something. But I think at the core of who we are, we really just want to kind of have the basic things that we truly need, and then be left alone for the rest of it. And there's a desire to be understood, though. And that's where I think all the LGBTQ stuff has really infringed, I think, on manhood, because like think about this. There was a time when you could hang out with guys, right, and just talk about guy stuff. But now it's all like there's no such thing as any specific genders or anything. So the expectation is that on some level, like, you can't just hang out with guys and just have a conversation and have this camaraderie between men, because we don't know what a man is anymore. And, you know, there might be some sexual thing going on, because who knows how people swing anymore. You know, and yet, if you leave all that out of it, I think there's something to be said, though, about the universal experience of what it means to be a man. And I think people of all different walks of life kind of have the same basic desires to be understood and to really kind of probably have a more solitary experience. I think that most men are more introverted probably than they really realize. I think women tend to be more social creatures, and so they make a big deal out of socializing with each other, and guys don't really do that. Like, it's not really a thing where as a man you want to just be hanging out with a bunch of guys all the time. That's not really what it is. But it is nice to know that you're not alone. Like, I think that's one reason why YouTube and something like that just has so much appeal to me, because it is a platform where there's a degree of anonymity, you know, like you kind of are just doing your own thing. You're just watching other people's videos, or maybe you're putting your own thoughts out there, but it's not hyper social in the sense that you're, you know, you're expected to make a whole lot of social commitments. But I do think that the other thing I wanted to talk about here is just how at the core of maybe what the culture of being a man is all about is we deal with stuff and we think about stuff, and we mostly do it in solitude, you know? Like, it's just like you go through things. Sometimes you feel like somebody did something bad to you. Sometimes you feel like something was unfair. Sometimes you look at all of the different experiences that you've had in life and you feel like, you know, it's a lot. But then you don't really necessarily go out and tell people about it. You don't necessarily make a big deal out of it, or expect that you need any kind of validation. You just kind of let it be what it is, and you say, well, I guess, you know, we'll figure it out, cross the bridge when we get there. And then you don't really necessarily know what to make of it sometimes, or you make a plan or whatever it might be, and you go to bed, you get up in the morning, and you do it all over again and log another day in the record book. And nobody necessarily is going to know what you're thinking. No one's going to see you going to bat for yourself necessarily. Nobody's really going to see you trying to get accolades or anything one way or another. Like, you just silently bear your burdens, and you don't complain, and you don't ask for attention. And people think maybe there's not a lot going on upstairs because you don't share everything on your mind with everybody. But that doesn't change the fact that we all do have things that are important to us and things that we're thinking about. It's just we don't necessarily share it with the world because it's not really the whole world's business to know, and we don't want to bother people with it. And I think the camaraderie part comes from maybe just kind of, I guess, getting the acknowledgement. Maybe it's a sort of validation that you get, which is meaningful, and it's not even that you want somebody to help interpret your experience for you. It's just nice to know you're not alone, and you're not the only person that's facing life kind of in that particular way. So, all things considered, you know, like I live in Montana, and Montana is known for being this sort of a solitary place. And I don't live the Montana lifestyle of, you know, being in the wilderness all the time or something like that. You know, I don't hunt or fish or particularly do a lot of hiking or anything like that. If I encountered a bear, I probably wouldn't know what to do with it, you know. So it's not like I'm really exactly, you know, a man's man doing all the Montana sort of things. Like I admire those things, but, you know, I mostly just play computer games and walk around the neighborhood and work my day job, and, you know, pretty uneventful, simple stuff. I don't have a lot going on. And yet I do think that my time in Montana has been a very solitary experience. I will put it like that. And I think what stands out to me is that very thing I was talking about, that there's a camaraderie, maybe a validation in being alone. And the weird thing is, it feels like maybe you spend your whole life always having stuff you have to do, always having people around you. And yet, the disconcerting, sad thing is you feel very alone through all of it. And so then when you find yourself actually alone, and all you have is yourself and a sort of solitude there, it's kind of liberating. Because for the first time, maybe in your life, you are on the outside what you've always felt on the inside. You always felt alone. But then you actually get the validation of being alone. And it just is what it is. And I think I've realized as time's gone on, the importance of having authentic relationships. And I think it's kind of disconcerting and unfortunate that maybe it's realized that it's better to have no relationships than a lot of fake ones. To have nothing going on than to have a whole lot of noise that's just people kind of clamoring for your attention and clamoring for your time. And you can just be. Sometimes I look at stuff like a picture of some guy's super basic apartment that's just a mattress laying on the floor and a computer in the corner and pretty much nothing else. And that just feels appealing. It feels appealing because it's nice to just have what you need and have nothing extra. It's nice to just have that sense of clarity. And so I guess it all just boils down to simplicity being probably the trademark of what it means to be a man. But if I'm trying to make any point, though, it's that despite the fact that we tend to be solitary, I think we also have a desire to be seen. a desire to be understood. And when you're looking for a relationship with a woman, that's important. And I've learned that from experience. It's not like people say that guys have a one-track mind, it's all about sex, and the truth is it's not, though. Like, I think really what guys want more than anything else is to be to be understood, not to be validated all the time. Like, that's obnoxious. Like, nobody wants that, to constantly have someone telling them that they can do no wrong. That's not what I'm saying. It's just to feel like somebody understands who you are without needing to necessarily say a word about it. Like, just a silent understanding and desire to be supportive and empathetic, and just to kind of have that "you got this" sort of a deal. Like, I'm not looking for anybody to bear my burdens for me. I'll figure that out. But to have somebody to understand kind of maybe some of the thoughts I have inside without me having to say to say anything. Like, maybe that's one of the rifts that comes between men and women, because women always want there to be some kind of exterior validation of them, and they always want a lot of communication and a lot of sunshine and rainbows to make them once again feel like they're beautiful and feel that they're validated and all of that. And guys, really, I think it's more of a quiet, solitary thing. Like, you just want to be understood and respected and cared for, but not necessarily in a super flashy way. And I think guys also tend to express loyalty through simple things as well. Like, you try to keep your word, you try to be faithful, you try to live up to expectations and stuff like that. But then you don't necessarily go out of your way to speak your mind too much. And then that can be interpreted as not caring or not being loving or something like that too. But whether we're talking about romantic relationships or we're talking about just the camaraderie, that at the end of the day, we're all in this together. I think at a time when maybe what it means to be a man is increasingly called into question, there is a universal thing that binds us all together. And it's not some kind of a weird gay thing. It's just that we're all kind of going through this journey, and we all have stuff that we're trying to deal with. We all have stuff we're going to work out on our own. And even if we walk alone, and even if we want to be left alone, honestly, it's always nice to kind of know, you're not alone. And I guess that's all I'm really trying to say, that, we walk alone, but we're not alone. And I think that's one thing that maybe has always unified gamers, because I mean, the truth is there's a lot of female gamers, don't get me wrong, but by and large, a lot of us are male. And maybe it's just in a world that is often feels fake and busy, gaming has been a place where you can just kind of go and you can be alone. It's kind of like looking at a campfire under a starry sky. Like, you don't really get anything out of it other than you're just there. Like, you're sitting there and you're looking at the fire and you're drinking that cup of coffee and you're just thinking through stuff, and maybe it's the same thing exploring some open world RPG or sitting there playing a city building game or whatever it might be, just something where you can just be alone and reflect on life, because probably for a lot of us, whether we're surrounded by people or mostly alone, the things that we try to work out, try to think through, try to figure out what are we going to do, most of that's a solitary experience. You just you and your thoughts, and maybe your favorite computer game or a long walk or whatever it might be. We all have our own ways of coping, but wherever you find yourself, just know we're all in this together, regardless of our views on stuff, regardless of our age, regardless of our hobbies or our interests or how we choose to cope with that. At the end of the day, there is something that just binds us all together as men, I think. And that is kind of weird, but also kind of cool. And I think that the progressive culture has kind of eroded that to a point, but I digress. So keep on gaming. Good luck on your adventure. As always, till next time, thanks for watching.